The September 9th, 2021 Kern County Planning Commission meeting. We'll start with roll call.
Commissioner Ashley?
Here.
Commissioner Judge?
Here.
Commissioner McKenzie?
Here.
Commissioner Skidmore?
Here.
Commissioner Sprague?
Here.
Mr. Murphy?
Here.
Ms. Simon? Here. Mr. Hall?
Here.
Are there any commissioner member announcements or reports? Seeing none, approval of minutes from August 26, 2021. I'll take a motion in a second for approval of minutes.
Motion to approve.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any abstentions or nays? Great. Item D, cases withdrawn or requests for continuance. We have none this evening. So we're on to item E, our consent agenda. These are items scheduled before the Planning Commission which are being recommended for approval by the staff, and the applicant has been informed of any special conditions and has no objection. The hearing on these items may be expedited if no member of the commission or audience wishes to comment or ask questions on the case. Are there any members of the audience who would like to remove item 1, 3, or 4 from the consent agenda? Seeing none, I know there's a statement from Commissioner Judge, so I'll pass it over to you.
Prior to the statement, turn to maybe Staff Member Murphy to go over the items, and then I will make a comment after that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Judge, members of the Commission. So yes, we have 3 items that are on the consent calendar this evening. The first is case number 1. This is specific plan amendment number 21, map number 10126, zone change case number 13, map number 10126. Our applicant is Rupinder, Gurmit, Gurvinder, and Parneet Judge by Cornerstone Engineering. This project is located on the northeast corner of Palm Avenue and Renfro Road in the unincorporated Bakersfield area. There are 2 actions before your commission this evening. The first is an amendment to the land use, open space, and conservation element of the Western Rosedale specific plan from map code RR to map codes UER, or a more restrictive map code designation. The second action is a change in zone classification from A to E1/2 RS, or a more restrictive zone district. The staff recommendation is to advise your commission to recommend the Board of Supervisors to adopt resolution and findings approving the specific plan amendment as requested, and then adopt resolution, findings, and enact ordinance approving the zone change cases requested that would become effective upon recordation of a final subdivision map as set forth in the attached draft resolution. The next case on consent is case number 3. This is conditional use permit number 8, map 140. Our applicant is Verizon Wireless by Sequoia Development Services. This project is located on the north side of Shotgun Road at 12450 Shotgun Road in the Tutman area. The item before your commission is a conditional use permit that would allow for the installation of a 100-foot tall lattice tower, wireless communication facility, and associated equipment shelter on a 900 square foot lease area on an overall 286.83 acre land that is zoned A. The staff recommendation is to approve the conditional use permit in accordance with the recommended conditions and adopt the suggested findings as set forth in the draft resolution. The last item on consent this evening is conditional use permit number 58, map 196. Our applicant is Environmental Recycling Services, Inc. This project is located at 1434 Flightline Street in the Mojave area. The action before your commission is a conditional use permit to allow for an aircraft wrecking facility yard on an approximately 5-acre portion of a 496-acre parcel that is zoned M2 PDH district. The staff recommendation is to approve the conditional use permit in accordance with the recommended conditions and adopt the suggested findings as set forth in the draft resolution. That completes the reading of the consent calendar tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Are there any commissioners who wish to remove an item from the consent agenda? Seeing none, Commissioner Judge.
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. Prior to making a motion for the consent calendar tonight, I would request, I have a conflict item number 1 on the consent calendar. I would request for our commission to have this item be voted on separately, and then request for the remaining 2 items, item number 3 and 4, to be voted in a secondary manner to complete the consent calendar.
I don't see any objections from fellow commissioners. Clerk, would we do a roll call for one, and then we can, great. Okay, so we are going to proceed with item number 1, and we will move forward with a motion and a second.
Move to approve item number 1 is read into the record.
Second.
A motion and a second, and we will do a vote on screen.
4 ayes, 1 abstain. Motion passes.
Great, thank you. Now we'll move on to items 3 and 4 together. We'll need a motion and a second.
Motion to. Second. Motion to move forward with 3 and 4.
We have a motion by McGiffney and a second by Sprague.
Oh, pardon me.
Technology.
All ayes, motion carries.
Thank you. Do we have any right to appeals, Mr. Murphy?
We do, Madam Chair. Cases 3 and 4 are final unless someone appeals those cases. So again, for projects where the Planning Commission action is final, those actions are subject to an appeal to the Board of Supervisors by any interested person, and no development proposed by any application may be authorized until after the final date of appeal. That appeal may be filed with the Kern County Planning and Natural Resources Department, located at 2700 M Street, Suite 100 in Bakersfield, with a filing fee of $540 on forms we have available at the department and that are on our website. That filing must be made within 14 days of and including the date of today's hearing. If no appeal is received, the action of your commission is final.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Item F, public presentations. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons desiring to address this commission on any matter not on the agenda. If there is any member of the public who is interested in addressing our commission, please come forward. Seeing none, we'll move on to the item that I think most of you all are here for, item number 2. This will be passed over to Mr. Murphy for introduction.
Thank you again, Madam Chair, members of the commission. This project was originally continued from your August 12th, 2021 commission meeting. That was continued in order for staff to review the additional comments that we were submitted. The project before you today is a conditional use permit that would allow for the construction of a cemetery that would include an office, a shop, mausoleums, calambries, and I'm sure I pronounced that incorrectly, and it also includes associated site improvements, all on a 12-acre portion of a 48.88 acre parcel. So the project site itself is designated RIA, which is our Intensive Agricultural General Plan designation by the Western Rosedale Specific Plan. And then the property itself, it also has an A, Exclusive Agricultural Zone District. The site itself is currently vacant, undeveloped agricultural land, and then access to the site is going to be provided specifically via Vega Meadows Road. And then as you can see on this particular map, just for the benefit of your commission or everybody else, the entire project site parcel is this 48-acre parcel. The proposal that you have before your commission today is specifically related to this portion of that parcel that we have right now. All right, and then the zone classification. So the project site, as I mentioned, has an agricultural zone classification. It is surrounded on 3 sides by property located in the city of Bakersfield. This property right here has a mix of residential and industrially zoned property. It is industrial right along the edge next to Santa Fe Way. This property right here has an R2 zone classification from the city of Bakersfield and is currently vacant. And then this property over here is completely built out in single-family residential development units. And then here we have an aerial of the entire project site area. So the proposed 12-acre development that we have before your commission today is phase 1. The remaining undeveloped area, if this project were to be approved, would remain for agricultural purposes until such time as the facility believes that an expansion would be needed. If an expansion were ever proposed, that proposal would require a modification to the conditional use permit and would have to come back to your commission for any changes, expansion to that particular use. The applicant is proposing hours of operation for the cemetery grounds to be from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. It would be open 365 days per year for visitation. The applicant anticipates approximately 5 to 10 visitors per week, and then between 15 and 20 visitors per the weekend on each day. All proposed funeral services would take place between 10 a.m. and 2:30 p.m. Again, this is according to the project applicant, which would allow for any graveside commercial backfill and appropriate cleanup of the particular site before the facility closes. This project does not include any cremation or mortuary services associated with this facility, so any of those services would have to be done off-site, and again, the proposed cemetery itself is for burial purposes only. Additionally, there would not be any direct ground contact, as any caskets need to be placed within a concrete lawn crypt. So any burials would have that concrete to help with any impacts to the soil itself. So according to the project applicant, the selection of this site and this particular location was based on a number of things. The first being the number of parishes and the number of parishioners that there are located within the Bakersfield and the Kern County area. Additionally, and unfortunate to say this one, the number of deaths is also something that was factored into in terms of their identification of needing a cemetery at this particular location. The facility itself is audited by the Cemetery and Mortuary Association of California, and then again, any oversight of the facility itself would come from the Fresno Diocese bishop. At the time of any purchase of any burial site, the purchaser is required to submit a fee that is obtained, and that purpose of that fee is to go for the perpetual care of the facility, including any maintenance with the grounds and other aspects of maintenance activities associated with the site. Staffing of the facility will include approximately 4 administrative staff members, and then the project proposes to have 3 groundkeepers at all times to be located on site. Currently, the applicant is proposing water to be provided from Vaughn Water Company, and staff did receive a will serve letter from Vaughn indicating that they could service the site. And then the applicant is proposing a private septic system. I will go over some of the conditions later on. Staff is recommending that, if possible, the applicant try to connect for sewer services to the city of Bakersfield. But again, if that were not to be possible, then they would be required to go through an exception to the sewer policies of the Kern County Western Rosedale specific plan, and the board would have to authorize use of the septic system. So staff notified surrounding property owners within 1,000 feet of the project site, all affected agencies and county departments. At the time of the writing of this staff report, staff had 8 comment letters from various comment agencies. Those comment letters basically indicated that they have no comment, or they had specific conditions of approval that they were requesting be incorporated into the project site, which we will go over later on. We also received approximately 20 letters in opposition to the site from interested persons and surrounding property owners, and then staff received 2 petitions. Both of those petitions were in opposition as well. The first one had approximately a little bit over 300 signatures, and I believe the other petition had approximately 20 signatures associated with that petition. The primary purpose, or not purpose, the primary concerns indicated to staff from the comments that we received in opposition had to do with potential concerns over property values, concerns regarding the increase in traffic, concerns regarding increase in crime, loitering, trespassing, things along those nature, concerns regarding the stress that services would be, resources that would be required, including fire, police, safety concerns regarding families, concerns related to excessive noise from the site, excessive lighting, and then just overall that many people felt that the site itself was better suited for a type of residential development as opposed to use as a cemetery. So what I'd like to do is first start to kind of summarize some of the general concerns that were raised along with some of the responses from staff, and then we'll kind of move forward from there. Regarding traffic, so the proposal itself, I want to make sure, you know, this, again, this is not an either or. It is not a we're going to have a cemetery or we're going to have residential development. The property right now is zoned for agricultural use. So I have nobody that is proposing any residential type of development on the site. However, people are familiar with residential development, and so we used residential traffic as a comparison so we could get, and your commission can get an understanding, what amount of traffic would we anticipate from a facility of this particular size. So traffic itself, as your commission may be aware of, the Institute of Transportation Engineers identifies various traffic counts for all types of uses, residential, commercial. They have one for cemeteries as well. So pages 5 and 6 of your staff report outline what the anticipated daily trips are associated with a cemetery of approximately 49 acres. And then for comparison purposes, we included what would be the same amount of trips, or what would be the number of trips if the site were developed at a single-family residential site of 10 homes per acre. So based on the Institute of Transportation Engineers calculations, they would anticipate 299 daily trips associated with the cemetery on weekdays. For comparison purposes, if houses were built at 1 per 10, that would be 1,600 trips per day during the weekday. So again, 300 versus 1,600. The bulk of any trips associated with the cemetery generally come on a weekend. So Saturday, they would anticipate having 441 daily trips, and then Sunday is the highest the day that they would anticipate visitors going to the site, and that would be 683 daily trips. Again, that compares to residential homes. On Saturdays, that would be 1,526 daily trips. And then on weekends, or on Sunday specifically, residential homes generate 368 daily trips. So again, we provided that information for comparison purposes. The majority of any trips associated with this site would be peak hours on the weekends versus peak hours during the weekday, when most of the other trips are generated from the residential homes. So regarding traffic in its totality, the staff does not believe that there would be a great increase in traffic over what's there now. Clearly there would be something more because it's zoned agricultural right now. But relatively speaking, in terms of what you see on a daily basis, staff does not believe that those traffic counts would show much difference than what happens currently. And again, the majority of the trips associated with the facility would occur on weekends as opposed to weekdays. Regarding concerns related to increases in crime, child, neighborhood safety, again, this proposed facility, it's completely closed when it is not in operation, which we will discuss in some of those conditions as well. When the facility is not open, there are gates that are closed at the front, and it is not open to the public 24 hours a day, every single day. You know, it's unlike a park where you can, whether it's closed or not, you can walk onto the park grounds. The cemetery itself will have security systems in place, and when they are closed, they're closed, the gates are closed, and you will not have anybody that would be going to the site. Staff does not believe that this particular use in and of itself would create significant amounts of crime or result in any increased safety issues, as the proposed use itself is relatively limited in terms of who would be visiting the site and then the times in which they could go to. Regarding concerns related to increases and stress on public services, again, I would note that the comments we received from agencies did not identify that there would be any concerns. Clearly this project would be reassessed, as all projects would be reassessed. Those fees are intended to help offset any public service impacts. I can also say that the number one user of services generally is residential use. That's when most of the calls come to, clearly commercial as well. Staff does not anticipate that this particular facility would generate great amounts of impacts to the services. Clearly you may have to go there for police or fire every once in a while, but those would be much less than what would be required to visit if the site were developed at any other particular use. So again, from a planning perspective and a land use perspective, staff does not foresee that this particular project site as proposed use would generate any concerns or increases or impacts to our various public service agencies. Regarding concerns related to noise and lighting, the project itself is subject to our dark sky principles, so staff does not believe that we would have any glaring light that would protrude upward into the sky. You know, clearly right now it is agricultural use, and so if you look at the site at night now, you don't see anything. But again, any proposed lighting at this facility would be for security purposes only, and it would all be required to be covered in appropriate shields, and it would face downward. Again, given the limited hours of operation, we also do not anticipate that during the hours when most people are home trying to relax and enjoy their evening, that this site would generate very much noise because of the operating hours in which the facility would be closed during those general times. With all that being said, staff is recommending approval of the site, but you know, everything is always in the details. So there's two things I'd like to mention first. One, staff does believe that the project itself is consistent with the goals and policies of the Western Rosedale Specific Plan. As your commission has come to realize, any project located in Western Rosedale is this transitional area of the county. I mean, unlike anywhere else really in the county. Is it a rural nature only? Is it an urban development center? It's kind of a mix of both, and it serves as this transitional area. Western Rosedale is attempting in its policies and how it was created to balance both development, but then also the rural character that so many people have enjoyed by moving out to this particular area. From that perspective, staff does believe that this particular project meets those provisions, as the project in and of itself helps to preserve openness of the area along with open space in general. While it would be developed, it would not be developed in such a manner that you don't see the open space and rural nature that residents are accustomed to in the Western Rosedale area. So again, what I'd like to do is, everything is always in the details. So I would like to go over, I normally don't do this as much, but I want to go over some of the very specific conditions that have been proposed so that your commission and the members of the public could get a sense and see how staff has addressed their concerns and how the facility would be required to operate as it goes forward. What I'd like to do first, though, real quick, again, for comparison purposes, they have a similar facility, our project applicants have a similar facility in Fresno. And so what I want to do real quick is show some of these pictures of the facility that is currently in operation in Fresno. Again, I apologize, they're not in any particular order. But they are graphics that show the buildings, that show some of the landscaping for the existing sites, show some of the buildings. And the proposal that is before your commission, while I do have a rendering, which I will show you here shortly, is very similar to this proposed facility as well. So the overall look and feel, this is the type of environment that the project applicant is proposing at this particular site. So again, I have a number of pictures, but I do believe that these are beneficial for both your commission and the community to see. Take note of this picture real quick, because I will be coming back to you with a point of clarification that your commission, as one of my conditions of approval. Trying to see if I have any different ones. This one. All right, so those are generally what the facility would look like. Oops. All right, so page 3 and 4 of the resolution is where all our conditions are located. So condition 4B, condition 2 first outlines the proposed use. Again, 5,000 square foot office building. Again, all the similar associated facilities that I mentioned earlier. Condition 4B as I mentioned to you before, we have a condition that requires that the method of water and sewer disposal for the project site needs to be approved by environmental health. If use of septic systems are proposed, the project proponent will be required to process an exemption to the sewer requirements of the Western Rosedale specific plan. Again, in conversations with environmental health, while they understand and believe that septic probably could go there, they would prefer to have the facility connect to the city of Bakersfield. So if this project is approved, they're going to request that the project applicant explore that possibility. And if that doesn't work, then again, they would be required to process that sewer exception. The second item I want to just briefly touch base, we're going to touch base with a little bit more, is condition D1. That is a 10-foot wide landscape buffer that's going to be on Vega Meadows Road, which again, I will be able to discuss in a little bit more detail on a few of my other conditions. This project is located in the Habitat Conservation Plan area, so condition 4E, again, they would be required to comply with that plan, pay all of our required habitat mitigation fees. Condition 5A, project would be subject to Metropolitan Bakersfield transportation impact fees, so they would be required to provide those. Condition 5D, that requires the project proponent, before any building permits are issued, that a comprehensive vector control plan is prepared and reviewed and approved by the Kern Mosquito Vector Control District. So interestingly enough, this project happens to be located directly adjacent to Kern Mosquito Vector Control. They run in these facility right here. I hadn't thought about this, but apparently some concerns that have been seen in the past are vases. You know, vases, a lot of people put flowers in vases. They have water that is in there that attracts mosquitoes. So, you know, the project applicant is very familiar with this. And so is vector control. And so to address that concern in terms of are we establishing a facility that would breed mosquitoes or anything along those lines, the project applicant will be required to prepare a vector control plan. That plan will have to be reviewed by Kern Mosquito Abatement District and sign off on it. And then, you know, they would implement it just as they would any other project or any other project that the county requires vector control as part of. And again, if something is not working, clearly it'll be an ongoing evolution and can be adjusted. But again, that was something that was identified as a concern, and that is the condition that staff has incorporated to ensure that that does not become a problem if this project is approved. Another condition I need to touch base on is condition 5E, 1 and 2. So the project itself, staff is requiring an irrevocable offer of dedication for 45 feet in width for all of Vega Meadows Road. So even though at this moment, the project applicant is only proposing construction on this 12-acre portion, as part of our project, staff will require dedication, of offer of dedication all along Vega Meadow Road, along the entire property, all in which they own. So again, that will be a 45-foot dedication provided to the county in terms of any future road construction along the entire way, that we have the appropriate width to construct that road. Additionally, in consultation with Kern County Public Works and the city of Bakersfield, the project proponent is going to be required to provide a dedication, irrevocable offer of dedication for Renfro Road. So currently, if you are not familiar with the area, this map shows it well. Any traffic that comes and utilizes Santa Fe to then get over to the neighborhoods and anywhere else, Santa Fe comes all the way up here to Reyna, in which you have a crossing, railroad crossing, and then you would come down Reyna, and that would access then Renfro Road and the communities and everything that is over in this side. The county has already adopted a specific plan line for Renfro Road. So Renfro Road, as you can see, comes up here. Right now it tees at Santa Fe. The county and the city are requiring Renfro Road to eventually cross the railroad tracks and come all the way down, and that way we have Renfro Road so that you don't have to go through that particular intersection. So as part of this proposed project, staff is requiring that the project applicant, again, even though they are building on this proposed location, they have to provide an irrevocable offer of dedication for half-width street to the county of Kern, so that when that road is ready to be constructed, that dedication has already occurred. The language, if you notice, does not specifically say 45 feet. The reason for that is because you have to go through a grade separation for the crossing, it may be more than 45 feet up at this location. So both the project applicant is aware and would have to work with the county and the county would have to work with the city as well to figure out ultimately what is that dedication that is required so that an appropriate grade separation could be constructed as Renfro Road comes all the way through. So again, staff is recommending that dedication be provided. I have two clarifications to the condition I actually want to read into the record just so you have it. In consultation with Kern County Public Works Department and the City of Bakersfield, the project proponent shall record, I want to add the language, a half-width irrevocable offer of dedication to the County of Kern of all subject property for Renfro Road along the adopted specific plan alignment, I'm adding that language, including the additional right-of-way for the grade separation per the adopted specific plan line, City of Bakersfield, and Kern County Land Use Division Ordinance and Development Standards. The required dedication shall include all project frontage adjacent to Renfro Road for APN 529-01221. So again, I wanted to change those two things just to make it clear that that is where the dedication is required for. Now, regarding street improvements, this project is located in a Type A street improvement area, so that is curb, gutter, sidewalk. So staff is requiring, as part of that particular condition, that as the project moves forward and before any final occupancy or the commencement of activities occur, the project proponent will be required to build curb, gutter, sidewalks from Renfro Road all the way to the project frontage that they're right here. So again, staff is not requiring the construction of the roadway all the way down. That actually may interfere with some of the farming operations that would continue. We're getting the dedication, but in terms of improvements, staff is requiring Type A curb, gutter, sidewalk improvements to occur from Renfro Road, off-site, that little portion, and then on-site on the project site and project frontage. One thing I would just like to note for the record and for everyone involved, the county is still in the final process. We're working with the city to identify exactly where that alignment is. So the project proponent, if that alignment gets moved over a few feet or wherever it is, from the end of where that project is through the project frontage is where they would have to do that curb, gutter, sidewalk. The final remaining conditions I just want to touch base on, again, have to do condition 7A. Staff is proposing that the cemetery hours of operation and visitation be from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. and then at 6 p.m. after daylight saving has ended. And then staff will be permitted on facility grounds prior to operating hours. No ceremonies or public activities shall commence prior to 8 a.m. and must conclude no later than 7 p.m. So I bring that condition just because, as I mentioned in my staff report and per our project applicant, they have indicated to us that funeral services would not be done outside the hours of 10 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. It is not customary necessarily for staff to be that specific on our conditions of approval. Is there anything special about 10 a.m. versus 9:30 in this particular case? School is already in session. Staff doesn't necessarily believe there is. However, you do have an additional comment from residents of the community that said if the applicant is proposing that, then why is that not incorporated and it should be incorporated as a condition of approval? I just note that for your commission as part of your consideration. Staff did not put it in there at this time, but that is clearly something that your commission could add if you felt that it was necessary. Condition 7B, this is just for clarification purposes and to ensure that all cremation and mortuary services are not permitted on site. So we've incorporated that into the conditions of approval. Condition 7C, I would hope this wouldn't occur, but you never know. We put very specific provisions that the utilization of fireworks or firearms are prohibited. So we made sure that just in case that is incorporated as part of their conditional use permit. We do have that written authorization from the planning director could allow it for a one-time use, but clearly if you're talking about firearms, that's something different. That would involve a whole bunch of other approvals. And again, we just want to make sure that that was clear that nobody would do that in and of themselves. Condition 7D, and sorry. I apologize, I had not put this one up. So this is the proposed site plan. So this is a zoomed in version of the site plan that is being proposed where the development occurs. So at this time, staff is ensuring condition 7D that the project right now only have a single point of access. So that would be at this particular location. Again, if the project is built out into the future, that would require a public hearing before your commission in which there may be alternative and alternate or additional access points that are proposed. That action is not before you today, so staff felt it was important to incorporate a provision that just specified that for this development right now, only a single point of access is proposed. Condition 7E. So staff indicates the proposed facility shall require a minimum 7-foot-high masonry wall along the frontage of the development project site on Vega Meadows Road. The remaining site shall be fenced with a 6-foot-high chain link fence and associated privacy slats as approved by the Kern County Planning and Natural Resources Development Director. So, just so that we're clear on that, staff has identified in this condition that the entire project frontage incorporate the block wall that you saw similar in the pictures and renderings that were provided. We are also requiring, as part of condition 7F, a 10-foot landscape buffer. So you would have your sidewalk, you would have 10 feet of landscaping, then you would have the block wall. That proposal is similar to the residential developments across the street. You know, if you're not familiar with the area, those properties have curb gutter sidewalk, then there is some landscaping, then they have a horse trail or a walking trail, then they have their block wall that runs along the entire residential development. So as proposed right now, that would be very similar and matching what is across the street. The reason I wanted to bring that up though real quick is because I have a rendering from our project applicant, and I believe they're going to ask your commission, but as seen in their rendering, and then on that map I showed you earlier, graphic I showed you earlier, the applicant is proposing to have their gate, which would be wrought iron, then they would have their masonry block wall, and it extends for approximately 240 feet both directions. But then they're proposing wrought iron fencing that would then be the remaining portion of the project frontage. Again, as of right now, the way the condition reads, a block wall would be required along the entire frontage of boundary that is next to Vega Meadows. But I believe that our project applicant will be requesting that that condition be revised so that they could have a combination of block wall and then wrought iron fencing. I see both sides in terms of whether that's good or bad. A block wall would be very uniform to what's across the street. It would help secure and provide some additional security to the site. You wouldn't be able to see inside from Vega Meadows regarding what's going on in the facility. But then again, when you also compare it to some of the pictures that we looked at before, a cemetery in and of itself is a peaceful and pleasant place visually. And that wrought iron fence and the landscaping that occurs within a cemetery, that actually may enhance the community by having the wrought iron fence. So, but then you also can see everything that happens within the facility. So there are trade-offs to either one. The applicant, I believe, is going to be asking you for a clarification. As the condition reads right now, the block wall would be required along all of Vega Meadows Road. Again, condition 7F, that was the 10-foot wide landscape buffer. Condition 7G, again, public access needs to be managed through the construction of a wrought iron gate that's located along Vega Meadows Road at the main entrance. And then condition 7H, the project proponent shall provide security measures, including but not limited to use of cameras, alarms, and security patrols after business hours. Condition 7J, again, is the provision that talks about no direct ground contact is permitted for burials. All caskets must be encased by concrete lawn crypt. And then condition 8, staff is recommending a 2 years of granting of this conditional use permit to begin operation. Again, for members of the audience, what that means is if your commission does approve it, staff is recommending that they have 2 years to start the process. If for some reason they don't start that process within 2 years, they would either be required to process an extension of time, or if that were not to occur, the CUP would become null and void. So again, it's customary that we have 1 year on most conditional use permits. However, some cases and some projects, we believe 1 year might be not enough. Again, given everything that's going on with COVID right now, a number of people are having difficulties kind of getting some of their projects started for staffing and other purposes. So staff believes that it is appropriate to allow a 2-year time to get the project started specifically. So again, with my presentation, I'm going to be concluding the presentation. I've tried to provide your commission and the members of the audience the summary of how we've tried to address the comments that they have submitted. We had a number of comments that were provided, and we wanted to make sure that they had an understanding why we are recommending approval and why we think that this is an appropriate location for this facility, and how we tried to address those comments that were provided. So with all of that being said, the staff recommendation is located on page 9. Staff is recommending approval of the conditional use permit. It's in accordance with the recommended, and I'm going to say revised conditions, just for the condition that I read that revision to, and then adopt the suggested findings as set forth in the attached draft resolution. So that completes my comments regarding this proposed project. Staff is available for comments if you have any comments before you wish to open it up to the applicant and the public for public comments.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Do we have any direct comments for Mr. Murphy before we begin with public comment? Anyone? Great. Seeing none, is the applicant here, and would they like to make comment or provide additional information? Please state your name for the record as well.
My name is Carlos Rescon, Cemetery Director for the Diocese of Fresno, and I'm also a resident here in Bakersfield in the Northwest area. So good evening, Commissioners. Thank you, Mr. Murphy, for your presentation. The objective for us is to develop and maintain a beautiful cemetery, both inside and outside the property. We are implementing, as you saw, actual working models that have been successful in our Fresno operations. The concerns that were presented by the neighbors were read. I read each letter and acknowledged that their concerns are valid, but we're also in agreement with them that we do not want or will tolerate any type of illegal activities, no encampments, no disorderly behavior. We want to be a good neighbor, one that cares about the community, that takes pride in the appearance and the condition of this property. Thank you.
Thank you. You might want to stay somewhat close. Well, I'm sure we'll have questions for you later. Will the audience raise their hands if they plan on speaking during comment? Great. So I'm going to start with opposition, and I'd like each member to try and stick to 2 minutes. We will have the clock running right behind me, and it'll show you a red light when you've gone over time, and I will gently ask you about 10 seconds for you to wrap up your comments, okay? If you're interested in speaking, why don't you come down to kind of the front rows if you're comfortable with that, and please proceed with the first person and state your name, and if you can spell your last name for the record, that would be great.
Thank you for letting me go first. I don't like speaking in front of people, so I'd be less nervous if I go first. Thank you. My name is Alana Abercrombie. I live on Starshine Drive, which is the street directly across from the proposed site. I live with my 3-year-old granddaughter, my 5-year-old grandson, my daughter, and my son-in-law. And I'm the Grammy of our block. We have over 30 kids that I know personally and more that I don't know of, right on that street directly across from the proposed site. And Mr. Murphy, you know, you gave a very good presentation on the proposed business plan. I wonder if when you go home this evening, if you'd ask your daughter if she would mind living next to a burial site.
Ma'am, address your comments to us about.
I'm sorry.
No problem.
He did a very good job, though. But I noticed it's all business, that this whole presentation is business. And I heard one comment about noise, and I thought, noise? You know, that's not a concern. The concern for the majority of the people, I believe, is it's a burial site dropped right next to pre-existing family housing. We bought our homes first. What is the just way to do it is to build out, and the Catholic Church has plenty of money to build away from pre-existing housing, plenty of money. Build out away. Anybody else that start building around the cemetery, it's full disclosure. They know what they're purchasing. Did you see that picture of all the homes that it would be affecting? I wish that was back up there. it affects the human aspect of this is not being represented. Thank you very much. All of these family homes, pre-existing is the key word, pre-existing. The right thing to do is to build out away from pre-existing family homes. Property values, of course, that's a huge concern. I don't want to drive by and see those wrought iron slats with all the plots every day, every morning, every evening. I don't want our kids to go for a bike ride around the block and see all the, that's, you know.
Ma'am, please wrap up your comments.
Okay, I'm sorry. I just wonder if any of you want to live across the street from a burial site. You know, like I said, the Catholic Church has plenty of money to build elsewhere, and I'm hoping that our representatives have the integrity to rule justly for the human interest aspect of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Next public speaker.
Hi, good evening. My name is Melody Ray, and I live on Cheyenne Mountain Drive. That's about 80 feet from the future phases of the proposed project. That's almost closer than me getting to my vehicle that's parked in front of my house. You know, when we park on the street, we would be closer to the cemetery than where we park our vehicle. So one thing, every cemetery in Kern County was built prior to the homes being built. That's been a precedence in Kern County. And so why should it change now? As the previous speaker just said, our homes were there first, and now you're proposing a cemetery. The homeowners around the other cemeteries, they made the conscious decision to purchase their home near a cemetery. So they talked about how the cemetery would look and how they want to, you know, have an attractive, I don't know if that's the word they used, facility in our neighborhood. But this is also a picture of a facility they manage in Fresno. And I don't know if somebody can put it up for you to see, but there's, oh, thank you. Oh, here's another one. So there's boarded up windows. The stucco on the exterior of the building is failing. The concrete is cracked. So I'm wondering where their perpetual care fund is for this facility. But they're promising the facility next to our houses is going to look like the other one. I mean, I guess we have a 50-50 shot, right? So here's another cemetery managed by another applicant, or excuse me, management, that are on the coast, and they've both been abandoned. So this is St. Patrick's Catholic Cemetery, and I'm sorry, but I don't want that in my backyard. The other one would be Our Lady of Guadalupe, which I don't know if he can switch it. So that one I'll give him, that's a really old cemetery. I couldn't even tell you when the last burial there was, but again, it's abandoned, it's still there. Because once a cemetery is there, it is there. It's not like some other proposed use for this lot, that if it doesn't work out, something else can be built over it. Tear it down, do something else.
Please wrap up your comments.
Okay, perfect. The circuit courts have concluded that a cemetery is a secular use of land, regardless of owner. Regarding RLUIPA, the federal law that protects religious entities from land use discrimination, just a quote from the Senators Hatch and Kennedy during the Senators' consideration of RLUIPA. Not every activity carried out by a religious entity or individual constitutes religious exercise. In many cases, real property is used by religious institutions for purposes that are comparable to those carried out by other institutions. While recognizing that these activities or facilities may be owned, sponsored, or operated by religious institutions, or may permit a religious institution to obtain additional funds to further its religious activities, this alone does not automatically bring these activities or facilities within the bill's definition of religious exercise. So, the runway there for vector control. FAA prohibits residential areas as well as, what was the, public assembly in the runway protection zone. I don't know if that's something that's been looked at. I didn't see it in the staff report. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker. Please state your name for the record.
Thanks. Hello, Madam Chair, members of the Planning Commission. Jennifer Van Alstyne, V-A-N, capital A-L-S-T-E-I-N. You can see my house on this map. It's the one right to the west of the well pad at the bottom of the page. And would like to voice my opposition to this project. While I think that the applicant would be, maintain the land properly, I just don't want a cemetery that close to my house. According to a study from Realtor.com, cemeteries near homes lower property values by 12%, and it also makes homes stay on the market for longer when you try to sell. Also, if you go northwest on Santa Fe, 10 to 15 minutes, even driving the speed limit, you get to the Shafter Cemetery. So we're not very far at all from another cemetery. I would just urge the applicant to maybe try to find another parcel for their project. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Respected members, my name is Gurcharan Singh. I belong to Sikh faith. In our Sikh faith, we usually have cremation grounds away from the residential areas. I live right across the future phase of the project, and I took my kids. I have a son who is 2-year-old, and I have a daughter who's 5-year-old, and I take them on a walk to on the Vega Meadows, and I don't want them to see dead people, and they're gonna ask me, Dad, what is that? I'd rather take them to the amusement park or somewhere else rather than taking them on that road. So I really oppose this project. So I think you will consider that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Carmen Blanco, and thank you for being here, all right? We just moved almost a year ago with my husband and my kid. She's 16 years old. And we were thinking that we find the perfect place, We're really happy with the house and everything. And after like a little over a month ago, they told us that they're trying to build a cemetery over there. And I'm just gonna ask you this of each of you. Do you live, or do you like to live next to a cemetery? That's the only question I'm gonna have, okay? Have a good evening.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hi, Commissioners. My name is Ken Austin. I'm actually a local real estate agent as well, along with a neighbor as well. My home is on Cheyenne Mountain as well. That backs up right next to the proposed site. One of the biggest key elements for us, unfortunately, is we don't mind having a cemetery, but we do mind seeing a cemetery in our backyard. We literally have built a beautiful property, beautiful pool. Up on top of our pool deck, the proposed site, we could see right through those gates. That's not something that us as a family really want to see. Also, on the real estate side, the young lady was absolutely correct. Not necessarily up to 12%, but I would definitely say 5 to 10% value decrease is what I'm proposing. So we are in complete opposition of cemetery as well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public that would like to speak in opposition? Great. Please state your name for the record.
Good evening. My name is Sukhi Singh, and I live nearby, this proposed site. So pretty much most of the points are covered, but, the Planning Commission, they actually did a really, really good job, in actually trying to sell this project to the public, right? If I'm doing my development project, I would really like to do it in Kern County because they're doing a great job. So my request to the Planning Commission is, you highlighted all the pros, right? And probably Planning Commission, they spend maybe hundreds, if not thousands, they spend maybe hundreds or thousands of hours in having the due diligence and, giving us all the pros of this. Can they spend maybe 100 hours, maybe 40 hours in listing all the cons of this? What will be the impact of this? what will be the impact on the kids, 2 years old, 5-year-old? I have like 6-year-old, I have a 2-year-old, and I live nearby. And every day I will be going by this place. So can I request to you guys to do at least some assessment on giving us what will be the negative impacts of this? Because we heard all the positive sides of this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Mandy Cunningham, Cunningham. I am a mom, and I have 7 kids from 2 years old up into high school, and I also homeschool, and we go through a charter, but we're home a lot, and our backyard is right there. We literally are on Vega Meadows. So the beauty of our neighborhood, why we chose that area, is because of how the surrounding area is serene, and it's quiet and beautiful. We spend a lot of time on that trail that's right behind our house. That's a little walkway. Like some of the other people said, that's not what we want to see. It's sad to even picture our neighborhood with a cemetery behind it. That's not why we moved there. And like other people said, if someone wants to build a cemetery, that is obviously fine. We need cemeteries, but do it in a place where there's no homes already. I feel like that would be the right thing to do, and that would be the responsible thing to do, not to mention the fact that our homes are going to be lowered in their value, and we're all in growing families, and we might want to move soon, or we might want to move 10 years from now, and like other people said, the cemetery will not move. It's going to be there. So it's just not a neighborly thing to do. Like the man that spoke for the cemetery, he was saying, I want to be a good neighbor, but if you're a good neighbor, you would not build next to us. That's not kind. It's not looking out for us, and we are in opposition in every way to the cemetery, and we just ask that you guys would please consider finding another space that is not near families. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else that would like to speak in opposition?
I'm Roma Sanders.
Will you say that again into the mic?
Nah. I'm Roma Sanders, Sanders. Like everybody else, we live right behind where they want to put the cemetery. And like everybody else, we have no issue with there being a cemetery built. They shouldn't be right next to our house. Our kids shouldn't be outside waiting for the school bus, staring at death every single day. There's no reason for it. It makes no sense. This place is littered with empty fields all over this county. There's no reason it needs to be right next to our house. It's not like there's pre-existing plumbing for them or anything there. They got to build all this stuff anyways. Build it a few miles away. There's no reason why it needs to be next to my house. I got a young kid. 7 kids. I mean, we literally have block parties periodically throughout the year. We shouldn't have to look at a cemetery every time we want to have our kids out to have some kind of fun. I don't know why we'd want to build right there. It looks like it could be a very nice cemetery, but it doesn't need to be right next to my house, where my kid's going to school every day. Everyone else's kids going to school every day. I shouldn't have to think about death every single time I come home, every time I leave for work. It's bad enough I got to go to work and think about work. I don't want to think about death every time I come home. Okay? Don't approve it.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead. My name is Daniel Cunningham.
Hold on, go ahead and say it right into the mic.
Sorry, Daniel Cunningham. And I just had a quick point to add to what everybody else is saying. I know that it was said that there would be 8 to 10 cars maybe a day, but I've been to funerals, and at times there can be hundreds of cars. And again, depending on that time, you can't really make people leave a funeral. So what that's going to look like throughout the day, and like everyone's saying, if there's increased deaths, that's going to make a significant impact on the traffic and the neighborhood. So that's it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tracy Sanders. I'm married to Roma Sanders, so as he said, our house is right there off the proposed site. One of the things that I wanted everyone in the commission to consider is, as he said, we have a young child. He is autistic and has ADHD. It is very difficult to try to explain certain concepts to him at times, and I know that he is not the only one in the neighborhood with ADHD and autism. This can be hard to explain to him and hard to get him to comprehend what death is. And I would like to be able to explain that to him on my own terms as opposed to having to explain it to him every time we leave our neighborhood. That's just one thing that I would like anybody who has children or grandchildren to please consider. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Great.
Hello, I'm Carmen Lopez. I live on Cheyenne Mountain Drive next to them. I'm not gonna say nothing that hasn't been said because they've already made a good point. I'm just gonna say what my son told us. He has speech delay issues, so but he told us that he doesn't want to live near a cemetery because he doesn't want to see zombies. So, and also, like them, I don't want to have to explain to both of my kids. I have a younger one too, but we live next to. It's not something I want to explain to them every day. They've already lost people, but it's not something I want to have. This is where the dead people live, so that's all.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening.
Will you say your first and last name for the record?
Yeah, my first name is Osvaldo, my last name is Blanco, and I'm in the trucking business. And I just moved from, my wife just spoke, I just moved from Downey, California to Bakersfield. And it's a nice place where I live. I choose them. I was looking for houses all around, and it took some time to get something that I really like. And we have a year living in that area, in that community. And the picture, when I see that part over there, I can imagine so many things that they can build over there to make the neighbor better, to make the neighbor looks better, to the community, something that brings benefit to the community. I don't think this project is good, it's beautiful, it's a nice explanation, but I don't think it brings any benefit to the community. And I don't think that I moved from LA all the way to here. So every morning, thinking about death is already set. Can you imagine walk every morning in that, and you see that picture every morning, your kids see that picture every morning? I don't think that's what we want to see in the morning. And I think everybody is agree, because nobody wants a cemetery in the backyard. I think we all agree with that. There is a place where the cemeteries can be, but why we have to be mixed? We pay for those houses and because we want to live in a nice area. And I think that the project is good, but I don't want to see it close to my house every morning, every night. And I think that's a good point. And please consider it. And I don't know, we all human, and I know business is business. Maybe one day I need it, but I don't want to see it there now. So I appreciate if you consider that. That's not a benefit for our community. I think we all agree with that. And besides that, it's not a picture that we want to see every morning, every night. I travel a lot. I leave my family by themselves. When I'm on the road, I always thinking of my family.
Please wrap up your comments.
Okay, almost done. And when I'm traveling, I want to see my family happy when I come back. But if they're going to be in a place that I don't know who's going to get in the neighbor, it's not even safe. Nobody can guarantee who's going to get in there. So I don't think that's a good thing for our community. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Yes. Yes. If you plan on speaking the remainder of the evening, please speak into the microphone so the record can hear you. Thank you.
Darla Phelps. I'm basically going to repeat a bunch of what has been said. but it says the parishioners and parishioners and the number of deaths in the Catholic faith is no reason for this location to have been chosen. There is plenty of land in Kern County that has no houses around it already. That way people can choose to build their house around a cemetery if they want to. And regarding the increase in traffic, it says cemetery weekly trips, I think he added up, were like a little over 1,400 people from all over Kern County. That's not just in our neighborhood, that's all over Kern County who are Catholics. And those are different people coming, whereas if you had the 160 homes, those people live there. Those people are the same people there every day. It's not over 1,400 different people from not in our neighborhood that are coming weekly, 1,400 different people weekly to this area. And I'm not concerned about the crime in the cemetery. I'm concerned about the crime these 1,400 people a week are going to do in the neighborhood. They drive around the neighborhood. When you go to a funeral, they are like, oh, what neighborhood's this? They're going to be looking at the houses, and I'm going to be concerned about all these 1,400 different people every week driving through the neighborhoods. As for the graves, nobody, basically, as they've said, nobody wants to look at the graves and headstones every day. And it says in the reports, for a cemetery serving as a buffer for their neighborhood from the railroad tracks, everybody who's moved there has known about the railroad tracks when they moved there, so that's not a reason. The general plan and zoning consistency, let's see, looking at headstones and gravestones does not enhance the visual appearance. The staff believes the project is consistent with goals and policies of the Western Rosedale Pacific Plan looking at headstones. You can put the service that is lacking, the cemetery service in surrounding vicinity on property not with existing homes.
May I please wrap up your comments?
Okay. And so, basically, the tranquil nature of dead people is not suited for an area of mostly single-family residence. A neighborhood doesn't need a buffer from a railroad. The proposed use is not consistent with the purpose of the district. There are no cemeteries in the district. The cemetery should find land that has no housing existing around it. Then it would be consistent with the purpose of the district with nothing around it. Most important, nobody is allowed to bury their living or loved ones or anybody else in their own backyard, but yet you want to bury hundreds of people in our backyard.
Thank you. Please keep an eye on the time if you can.
My name is Patricia Martinez, Martinez. I live right on Cheyenne Mountain Drive. Everybody's kind of pointed out everything, but the biggest thing is when I bought, we all spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to buy a home, and you choose where you live. And I chose not to live by a cemetery. And I think all of you guys would have chosen the same thing. I mean, we all have our own opinions, but I chose not to live by a cemetery. If I move, I would still choose not to live by a cemetery. I think there's plenty of space right outside, right across the tracks, where there's a lot of open space, not by homes. There's a lot of other spaces, empty lots where they can choose. There's just a lot of different area. But we chose to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to buy our house, not by a cemetery. I think you guys should take a lot of consideration into that. We did when we bought. Otherwise, if we knew there was a cemetery that was going to go in, I wouldn't have bought there. I wouldn't have.
Thank you. Any other speakers in opposition? Okay, if you're planning on speaking in opposition or in support, please move to the front rows if you can, so we know who's speaking. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Daniel Ray. My wife spoke earlier. I have a couple of questions. They're mainly going to be for him, if you guys can address them to him as well. I would love to know what made them choose that particular site. in such a small area. If you look from the corner of Allen Road and Vega Meadows, where it goes all the way up to the corner where it turns, it's less than 1 mile. You know, it's not a real big area. It's a small road. It's a little 2-lane road. Most all the cemeteries around town, as I'm sure any of you that's been to a funeral, they're all on populated roads. They're either right next to the freeway. There's one down on Panama just off the 99. There's the one on the bluffs that's been there for, I don't even know how long, quite a long time. Very large road, very popular road. Everybody's been through there. There's the one off of Niles that's been there quite a few years as well. There's a lot of accesses to get to it. This one, they would either have to come down 7th Standard, down Allen, up Vega Meadows, right into our neighborhood area. So it's starting in that little yellow box right there, when and it will expand all the way down to where it comes into a point right behind our house. There's a street right there where a lot of these people are talking about they live all through there, even on the other side. When the parking lot's on that end, but a funeral is on this end, where are they going to park? Because there will be more than one access. They've already said that. There'll be one down on this end. Where are they going to park? In our neighborhood, in front of our house, blocking our driveways, getting in our way. Well, we didn't ask for that, just like they had said before. We didn't move there hoping there would be a cemetery. We moved there because we like the peace, we like the quiet. I chose the furthest end of Bakersfield for a reason. I picked that neighborhood because that school district is literally one of the best in all of Kern County. And in all of Kern County, why would they pick that spot when all the Catholic churches, this is the question mainly towards him, are majority on the other side of the 99? Not even on this side, not even near Rosedale. There's only 2, I believe, if I'm right. 2.
Sir, please wrap up your comments.
And that's all that I need to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Seeing no other movement on the opposition side, is there anyone here that would like to make comments supporting? Great, please move forward. Please state your name into the mic for the record.
Hello, members of the board. My name is Anthony Mungary, M-U-N-G-A-R-Y. And for the benefit of the board and the people behind me, I am the broker. Okay? Now, I took in consideration the fact that, in fact, the property that they live in is the property that I bought for my client, and I sold it to Lennar. Okay, and the little V piece up on top there that belongs to Grimway, I sold that to them too. I didn't see anybody come to want to buy that property except about 3 people that wanted to do a industrial development center. And since I live in that basic area also, right off of Allen, I considered, what am I going to do to these people if I bring in an industrial? Because the railroad's there, it's good for industrial, and that was one of the things the guys were looking at. The piece right there next to where the abatement is at, that's industrial, okay? Not only that, I had a comment from somebody about, oh, the chemicals. Oh, do they understand at all that that runway is for a plane that flies in and out over their homes loaded with chemical? So I was considering the people that live there when the church came along and said, what do you think of this? And I said, you know, it's quiet, it's good, and you know what? I lived, they talk about living by cemetery. I don't know how many of them know where the Union Cemetery is at. I lived next door to the Union Cemetery, where they used to bury the indigent people. I never got visited by any of them, and I never got scared, and my parents never had to tell me about any of it, okay? So, I'm sorry about their children, but I thought this was helping them. Okay, so they can go ahead. They can go ahead and do, you know, try and figure out what they want to do. And if this doesn't work, yeah, I'll go for the industrial site. Okay? Thank you. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Audience, please, please. Let's be cordial to them as they were cordial to you.
Hi, my name is Virginia Santos, and I don't know these families, but I understand their concern. I do work for the Catholic Church on the east side. I also know that on Reyna Road, we have another Catholic church from the Diocese there. I just want to make a few comments. On the grandmother comment about the grandbabies and being the grandmother of the neighborhood, I completely understand her. With all my heart, I do, because I live in Central Bakersfield, where when I bought my home, I didn't know there would be tents everywhere and homeless people and drug addicts, and I'd be raising my grandchildren there. But we drive by, we live with it, we do what we can, and we keep going on. I understand that. We also run a cemetery on the east side, the Memorial of the Unborn, where at least twice a week I bury miscarried babies there. So I understand your concern, but the neighborhood did not have a problem. Maybe the impact for them is because we are not on the preppy side of town. We're on the east side, so nobody complained. But we do, it's a cemetery where we bury babies, and we have funerals there. And the impact of the cars is not an issue. Our masses and burials are at 10 a.m. and 1 p.m. So I understand the hours of operation. The cars that go there go for that, and for only that reason. We have families in homes, neighborhoods behind us, and we have industrial in front of us. So the impacts that everyone is so worried about, it's not that bad. And I understand what you're saying, but we're all going to be buried. We all drive by cemeteries, maybe not every day, but I do to get to work by Union Cemetery. I don't think about the death. My grandkids don't question it, and if they do, I have to explain to them when we go to a family member's funeral or a grandparent's funeral what death is. So we can't say that it's because of that. So everyone's going to be buried. If the problem is that it's a Catholic church, because I keep hearing that, and money and Catholic church, we're all going to be buried. It's a great thing to have. There is no noise. There is no people making a mess. There's no problem with it. We haven't had it on the east side, and we are in the heart of the ghetto where my place is, and we don't have problems. I just say, let's open our minds a little and give it a chance, because I paid hundreds of thousands of dollars too, and I have homeless people, drug addicts, and tents everywhere around my home.
Please wrap up your comments.
Thank you.
Audience, please. Thank you so much. Is there anyone else that would like to make a comment? Seeing none, we will close the public comment period and bring it back to the board for discussion. I know this is a very emotional and personal issue, so I want us to make sure we're cordial during the conversations, please.
Madam Chair, can I just respond to a few things before
Absolutely.
your commission, so you can have the parameters by which you can your commission can go through your
Yes,
comments.
thank you.
Again, first of all, I want to make sure I appreciated and thanked everybody for coming out. I kind of want to summarize a little bit in terms of the overall review and the choices before your commission as you go here. The first thing I want to touch base real quick is we had a comment, one that was brought up. Oh, actually, first real quick, and I apologize, I just have to say it. So, we work for the county, not the applicant. They're the commission, we're the planning department. Application comes in, and we make a recommendation, and ultimately they'll make a decision. But I don't work for the project applicant or anything along those lines. The site itself is, and the comment was brought up about the runway. So that runway is for the vector control. They use that, and from a land use perspective, a private runway is not protected by the FAA. It doesn't have the same rights as an airport or anything along those lines. However, with that being said, a facility like this use has a lot of open space. It is actually more compatible with the operations of the runway than any other use that would be proposed, whether it be residential, commercial, industrial, anything along those lines. Other than ag, that is a facility that is compatible with the runway. Regarding the project site itself, and again, I completely appreciate everybody's comments, and I just want to make sure the property is zoned agricultural. It is not zoned residential. This applicant is not asking for a change in zoning to change it to industrial or everything along those lines. A cemetery is an allowed use in an A zone with processing a conditional use permit. It's also an allowed use in an R1 zone. So I looked at our zoning ordinance. You can be zoned R1, and with the conditional use permit, you can put a cemetery in that location. It's all about the impact compatibility with that neighborhood or with the surrounding uses is really what it comes down to. But the use itself is a compatible use. That's why it's located within that particular zone classification. So as your commission discusses this, you know, a conditional use permit has very specific findings that you would have to make to either approve or deny a conditional use permit. Most of the people that I heard comments from were related to, I just don't want to live next to a cemetery. I completely understand that aspect of it, but you have to, when your commission considers this, you have to debate that in the context of property rights, what the site is zoned, and again, I just mentioned that, and I will go through the specific findings that you are required by law to make when it comes to a conditional use permit. But it's just important to know that this use in and itself is not inherently incompatible with residential development. And again, the things that are allowed there right now, just for, again, comparison purposes, someone can come in right now without any discretionary decisions. They can put animal products processing, they could put a cold storage facility, they could put a cotton gin. So to make the concern being primarily, I just don't want to be across the street from that, that's not quite how land use works. You have to look at what it's zoned. And again, there are a number of things. And again, every solar project, you have people that come say, I don't want to live next to a solar project. We've had a lot of people, we have projects that they request multifamily zoning. I want to change my property from R1 to R2. People come out, oh, I don't want to live next to an R2 zone property or anything along those lines because I don't want to see an apartment complex. You just have to weigh that in the findings, which I will make sure that I summarize for your commission as you go through so that you have the parameters by which you could discuss. The only other thing I wanted to make sure that I mentioned, because a comment was brought up on the roadway. So in general, a road, especially in the Western Rosedale area, because it is that transitional, development is occurring, a roadway is only built out to its full width when the traffic warrants it, and most of the time when development occurs. You know, the road that's built now for Vega Meadows was built because houses were constructed there. Therefore, that project developer built the entire half width on Vega Meadows. Just like this applicant, the portion where they're building their project, they will have to widen the road because they have to give their dedication and build that portion of the road. If development occurs the rest of the way, the entire roadway will be widened to where it won't be a two-lane street. It's not intended to be a two-lane street because it needs to be much bigger for the type of roadway that it is. So in talking to Public Works, they even indicated to me that at ultimate build-out, there actually may be a turning lane that runs in the middle, separating the two roads, just because that's the design of that particular street when it gets to the ultimate build-out. So the only thing I want to make sure I have for your commission as you go through your consideration is on page
Commissioner Murphy, will you state what road again will potentially have more build out?
Sure, Vega Meadows Road. So that would be the road right along there. Because again, this property would have to dedicate their width, 45 feet width, and so that would widen the length of the road.
Thank you.
Page 8 of your staff report identifies the 5 findings that so that's really the crux of your discussion today, is there are 5 specific findings that have to be considered when a conditional use permit is proposed. The first is that the use is consistent with the goals, policies of the applicable general plan and specific plan. So again, that is a decision that your commission can come through. This project, either you believe it does or does not meet the goals and policies of the specific plan. Second, the proposed use is consistent with the purpose of the applicable district or districts. Well, it's zoned A, and so you just have to go through that aspect of it. Third, the proposed use is listed as a use subject to a conditional use permit in the applicable zoning district or districts, or a use determined to be similar to a listed conditional use. So our zoning ordinance does list this as one of those uses. 4, the proposed use meets the minimum requirements of this title applicable to the use. So right now they are not proposing any development standard that does not meet the specific titles. And then finally, and this is another one that gives you, the proposed use will not be detrimental to the health, safety, and welfare of the public, to property residents in the vicinity. So those are the 5 points that your commission can go through as you weighed those public testimony and provide your comments is that whether you recommend approval or denial, you have to make the findings from those particular provisions as to whether or not this project does or does not meet those standards. So I just want to make sure your commission had that before you went through your deliberation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Commissioner McGiffney, you're first on the board.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had a couple questions for the applicant and then some comments. I just wanted to be clear why this site was chosen. If you had considered other sites, just some background there would be helpful to me.
Sure. Actually started in 2010 when I started working for the Diocese. I lived in Bakersfield all that time, and we have explored several different properties, 6 of them in total. This particular one, it's actually been 2 years to the date of August that we've been trying to close escrow on this property. So it didn't happen a couple of months ago. We've been working at this particular property for 2 years. Of course, the location, the price, a patient realtor and a patient seller, because of COVID and all of the different requirements that we've already explored with mineral rights and will serve letters. So the diocese has already invested quite a bit of funds into this particular property, and it rides on a approved CUP, or we will withdraw.
All right, thank you. And then on the traffic pattern on a procession, how would you envision that occurring? Because I look at this map and I would think maybe if you built Rhina Way out or Rhina Road out, it would make more sense to have an entry there versus the residential neighborhood, which is, a little difficult to maybe access and move a procession through and park and all that, because I've been through those before, and they're very large, and it does have a lot of traffic and a lot of parking for short periods of time.
That's correct. The main roads would be Rosedale Highway. Then there's Noriega that comes off of Callaway. But really the cemetery being a Catholic cemetery, the majority, I would say 90+% of the funerals that we will receive are coming from a parish. So they'll be coming either from St. Elizabeth and Seton down the street. It could be St. Philip's Church on Stockdale, or the eastern other 12 parishes, and then you go north to Shafter and south to Pumpkin Center for Sacred Heart Church. So taking the 99 Rosedale, maybe the Central Expressway, the new expressway that's being connected, going up Allen off of Rosedale, or coming down through Santa Fe. Those are the routes that we were anticipating that we would be using.
So, like I said, with Vega Meadows being the only entrance, would you envision a Renfro Road entrance eventually if that road was built out?
Not necessarily, because my understanding is that's going to be an overpass. So I don't know how they would make an entry through Renfro if there's an overpass there. There was some indication of a possible road where it tees off right on top of the vector control borderline to the north. I'm not sure what that street is called, but I believe it's Noriega, continues straight to the railroad tracks, and then it goes north to Vega Meadows. On the overview, you kind of see either an alleyway or a pathway there, I'm not sure, but yeah, a different entrance would be helpful, but I don't foresee one through Renfro because of the overpass.
Okay, thank you. And then just some, thank you very much, sir. And just some comments. Mr. Murphy said, the banana principle, build absolutely nothing near anyone, anytime. We see a lot of that and I understand why, because no one wants to, change their anything when they buy some property, and I get that. So, we're trying to, as a commission, we're trying to make sure we have the best and proper use of anything. And I could see an industrial site going there, or cold storage as well. And I don't think you'd like that there either. And I wouldn't if I lived there for sure. So, I know a cemetery isn't necessarily what you think of, but, I guess, people do trick or treat, they do Halloween every year. How do you explain that to your kids? I mean, that is basically talking about death or spirits or things like that. I mean, those are things that we talk about. COVID, every day in the media, we talk about death. I mean, homelessness was mentioned before. How do you explain that to kids when you buy that? And then if you go to church, you see the cross, which is the symbol of Jesus Christ's death and resurrection. So we see that. It's not a thing we don't see or have to explain to our children. So I guess I get what everybody's saying about the cemetery, and I have my own thoughts about where that's located. But at the same time, we can't sit there as a community and sit there and think these are things we have to ignore or completely we do ignore, because we don't. And I just want to make that clear that some of these thoughts here are nice, but the reality is there's a lot of other things going on in our community that we need to look at. And this is probably not the worst thing out there for us to talk about to our children necessarily. It's a peaceful resting place for final relatives, friends, where they end up at the end of their life. People may object to that, but that's a reality. And people do talk about things like things like death and other things related to that. And like I said, that's not something we ignore necessarily, but we have to understand that, this is a thing that we go through, and it's part of that life. And we do discuss it. We just don't always think about it when we talk about things, but it's out in front of us every day. So, I appreciate everybody's discussion on that, but I do want to make those points because I think they are important to understand, what this is. It's not something that's necessarily an affront to the community just by its existence. And thank you, Madam Chair. I yield back.
Thank you, Commissioner McGiffney. Commissioner Sprague.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On here somewhere. There we go. First of all, I want to thank you all for coming out tonight and voicing your opinions of the neighborhood. I do sympathize with you as to where your locations are adjacent to this development. I would like to ask staff if they could elaborate on the statement that's been made many times here, that a cemetery decreases the property values of residential properties there, and is it something this commission can consider in making a decision? As I understood it, and have understood it for years, that we can't consider residential property values in making our decisions on these projects. Is that correct or not?
Commissioner Sprague, through the chair, and I allow council to provide any follow-up if they would like to. From an overall processing standpoint, clearly, if the use is compatible, that can be part of a factor that you're considering. However, one, you have to make sure that we are 100% sure that, hey, that information, we have a report, we have something that it goes through. I can tell you for the record, I don't have anything in my files other than the statements that were made today. So you would be basing it on those comments. And then two, I would only offer that some of property value discussions are subjective. And I say that because what one person doesn't want to live next to and think it negatively affects their property value, some people actually would pay more because they do want to live next to that. Western Rosedale is an area where people move generally because they don't want to live in a urban dense area. They want to have larger lots. They want to have different spaces. So that could be something different to someone that lives in Western Rosedale than a particular project that is located somewhere else. So yes, you can consider it. I would just advise that you make sure you make those considerations on the information that is in the record, not information that we may or may not have a basis on.
So bona fide facts presented to this commission in the hearing.
Bona fide facts or reasonable assertions of facts. You don't have to have 100% certainty, but you need to have a reasonable basis for what your findings are. And obviously, property values are speculative. We could think of 5 different things that could go there that I think would be worse from a property value perspective, but that's 5 different things that could also go there that would be better for a property value perspective. That's not what you're doing right now. You need to be looking at this. You don't need to have 100% certainty, but you need to have a reasonable belief. And we have always, in this county, considered the property values to be at the point of speculation, because it really is. That's, I think, about sums it up.
Thank you. Madam Chair, that's all my questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Sprague. Anyone else? Any other commissioners? Commissioner Jesh?
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair. First and foremost, I would like to thank everyone that came out to speak on for and against the project tonight. We do value opinions, and as Mr. Murphy said, our goal here is to look at land use and try to understand how land use can fit amongst the guidelines that are provided on top of us as commissioners. I do have a few questions for staff. I want to start off with that. I do want to come back to this conversation that Commissioner McGiffey also mentioned as well too. Accessibility to this site is, I think, something we think about and look at. And I would want to understand a little more about Renfro Road. You did mention that they will have to give the dedication for Renfro. Can you clarify who will be responsible for Renfro Road and its development and the time frame of this development, if at all?
Commissioner, Judge, through the chair, and if I could get the overhead back on, I might be able to help. And we do have Josh Champlin with our Public Works Department that might actually be able to answer it better than I could, or he could provide any additional information that I have right now. Again, currently, existingly built, we have, I guess I could use left-handed, Santa Fe that comes all the way up here. This is on the, which is located on the west side of the railroad tracks. Santa Fe comes all the way up to Reyna. And again, there's a little corner here that kind of comes across from Reyna. And then you would get to Renfro. You would travel south if you wanted to come to the facility, north, and again, I don't have a bigger map, but this takes you up to Olive, Kratzmeyer. You have Frontier High School up in this area, and you have some areas over that direction. This road comes down here, Vega Meadows, comes all the way down, and it runs into Allen. And so Allen is the primary northwest, or a primary northwest roadway in the area. So if people were going to access the site, I guess part of it I think would depend on where they're coming from. If they're coming anywhere along Santa Fe and they're familiar with the area, I think this entrance would be somewhat better. Until it's completely built out, or if they're not familiar with the area, I do anticipate that probably traffic would come up Allen and then Vega Meadows, just because those are existing streets. Regarding your question on Renfro Road, so the Board of Supervisors has adopted an alignment for Renfro Road. So Renfro Road did not used to be identified to come here. It came over somewhere up here, and Renfro Road crosses Santa Fe and it comes down and connects, and then Renfro Road comes all the way down and connects to Stockdale. So the board adopted, and then the city of Bakersfield also adopted, a specific plan line to connect Renfro Road so that you didn't have a weird jog. Jewetta is kind of one of those jogs. If you're familiar with Jewetta, mm-hmm. You're on Jewetta, then you have to get onto Rosedale Highway, then you get onto Jewetta again, and it kind of does a weird, to help alleviate that, and then plus the overall efficiency of traffic, they want Renfro Road to come all the way through. At some point, that will be built and the alignment will be developed. The project applicant, we're requiring them to provide the dedication so that the county already has the land. They would have to provide that to the county, our width, our half of it, the 45 feet plus whatever is needed for any grade separation with the railroad tracks. If and when the property is developed on the city of Bakersfield side, most likely that applicant would dedicate that property to the city of Bakersfield. And then again, ultimately, and this does happen, half of a road is maintained by the county and half of it's by the city. Sometimes they go through an agreements and they've come to an agreement where the city will do it all or the county will do it all. But because of the jurisdiction, where the jurisdiction ends right now, it's the center line of where the ultimate Renfro Road alignment will be located. And so, again, development, and it would occur and it'd be built out whenever the city and the county believe that there is sufficient traffic to do it, or more likely when a development project occurs in that particular area, and then that dedication would be required, and as part of that improvement, those projects would be required to construct type A curb, gutter, sidewalk, and build out the ultimate road right away.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. I would actually, if we have Josh from Public Works, I do have a couple more clarification on that, if you don't mind me requesting on that. So is it my understanding that, this CUP is for the 12-acre portion currently, but the location can be grown into the 40-acre in the future if it does design for that. Has the applicant, have they touched anything about their future development to develop the site between the 12 acres to the Renfro Road section at all? And if that was considered during this review as far as what would be required for development purposes?
Commissioner, Judge, through the chair, let me answer the first part of it because that's the planning side of it. Is the application that we received has always only wanted to propose this development at this particular 12 acres. However, the original site plan they gave us showed that they do anticipate wanting to develop the remainder of the site at some point in the future. They just didn't have any timing in terms of when. You know, clearly that would be based on when it was needed. And so because that item was not before your commission, you know, we don't want a site plan that shows all of the development. So what we did is we had them propose the development that they're proposing, so the 12 acres. But again, as part of our response, because we know they maybe would want to develop later on in the future, that's why we're requiring the full dedication for all of Vega Meadows Road. But again, if it were to be proposed, we would have to go through a public hearing. It would not be able to be expanded on without a public hearing. It would have to go through the similar process that we're going through now if at some point they want to change the structures on the facility and or expand the boundaries.
Okay, thank you. So regarding the development of that road, the question I have is, someone mentioned earlier that it might have to be an overpass on Renfro. Is that part of the specific plan design for this future, or is that just something that was speculated?
No, so the answer kind of we're trying to get to on this is
We have what's called the separation of grade district within the Metro Bakersfield area. And so this is kind of a group of county engineers, city engineers, and then we have an actual consultant who is our separation of grade engineer, who's a private consultant. So we have an overall list of areas within the county and city that we've targeted for separation of grade projects, and we have priority rankings on them. For instance, like Rosedale Highway, the railroad crossing on Rosedale, that's a very high priority. And so as funds become available, we target these higher priority separation of grade projects. So this is on a list of grade projects because of the specific plan line that was adopted by the city and the county. And so it's been identified, and I'm not sure where on the list it ranks, but at some point in time, it will be the city and the county's obligation to construct this overpass over the railroad and over Santa Fe. But we look at it when the traffic necessitates this, when the need arises to get the circulation.
And from my understanding, is this project does not come close to getting to that traffic count requirement that is required for that type of development.
Correct, yes. It doesn't generate much traffic according to the publications that we use, the federal publications that we use to forecast what kind of traffic this will add.
And so the reason why I'm asking is again, just down the street there is Reno Road, which does have a cross-section over Santa Fe, but that is at grade, not requiring an overpass. And the reason why that is separated compared to this requiring overpass is because the specific plan we're discussing that is required for grade separation. Is that my understanding?
Yes, and that Rena intersection is it's really old. It's been there for a long time. And so the railroad, and I couldn't tell you how that the agreement there had come to pass, but I know that the railroads no longer allow at-grade crossings. It's not allowed by any railroads that I've come across in my career. That they have prior right on almost every location that I've come across, and so they get to control those, and so they don't allow at-grade crossings anymore.
Okay, so thanks for clarifying. That helped me understand why that wasn't, because I was also looking at the idea of putting an access off Renfro Road, allowing that to be more, I'm assuming Renfro is considered more of an arterial, considered instead of inline street, like residential would be more accessible as far as traffic flow. But having an overpass, I can understand why that couldn't function well. Is the interior road that's currently accessed, is that considered an arterial, or how is that road considered versus the designation for Renfro?
Vega Meadows?
Yes.
That's a collector. So collector is the second largest designation, arterial being the largest. And so
collectors can ultimately be built out to 4 lanes of traffic, but depending on the traffic patterns, when they get fully built out, a lot of them will actually get built out 2 lanes with a dual left turn lane down the middle. So when they get fully built out, we have to make that determination based on the traffic counts, how we stripe it.
Thank you for that clarification. I appreciate that. And then coming back to Mr. Murphy, another question. Something you did, one of the members of the audience mentioned that when a cemetery, if ever, is abandoned or closes shop, the land is not being repurposed. I do not know the understanding of that. And do you have any clarification on that? Is if a cemetery, for some reason, it does not able to function or at time closes its doors, is that land can be repurposed or reused, or does that land go dormant?
Commissioner Judge, through the chair. So I would generally agree with the comment that was made in the fact that unlike a commercial business or an industrial business or even homes, that a use can be changed. You know, once you have bodies that have been buried and we have a cemetery that's been established, you know, there are some protections in terms of the rights of those remains to be in that location. You know, clearly I'm sure there's a process that potentially could happen. They could be removed and buried somewhere else. However, the likelihood of that, just from a general basic thought process, is that would be a difficult task, I would think. And so from a planning perspective, I would process this and the thinking of it as, if a cemetery is established there, then it most likely will be a cemetery then for infinite a number of time. It would not be a use that I would imagine would change dramatically. Now, if they don't build out the entire way, you know, clearly the areas to the south or the portions that were not developed, that may not be. Or if they have part of a CUP that they've only used half of it, then clearly the other half could be used for something else and they can go through a particular process. We evaluated and looked at to help ensure that there's long-term maintenance. Again, there is a state agency that oversees cemeteries. However, there is a specific clause in that state agency that says if you are a church or a religious facility, you're exempt from their particular oversight. That's why I indicated that there is this association that provides the audit. And again, they still have to adhere to all federal and state laws, but a church that is a nonprofit is specifically exempt from the state agency that provides that oversight. If you have some concerns or questions regarding how the long-term maintenance is, again, I can give you the brief part, but I would recommend that you ask the applicant how that works specifically. But they have indicated to us, because we asked that same question, is that when someone decides they want to reserve a location, that there is a fee that they have to pay that helps to establish the endowment and the other funds in place that ensure the longer-term maintenance of the facility. But again, I believe that if you have specific questions on that, it's more appropriate to ask the applicant as they've run similar facilities.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy, and I will come back to that before talking to the applicant. Then I had one more question on understanding the use, because again, a lot of questions were brought up tonight about why this is being proposed here versus somewhere else. And, you know, this is ag land. And I know that you made a comment earlier that ag land cemetery does fall under conditional use permit allocation for an ag property. Now, the question I have is, this is, again, for this 12-acre site. I do understand from today's communication that this possibly can end up being the larger 48 or 49 acres in the future. If this project starts growing in the future, are they still, per land use, would fall under CUP, or will they have to go through a zone change at that moment in time, depending on the densification of the project?
Again, Commissioner Judge to the chair. So the action before your commission this evening is only these 12 acres. Any expansion, so anything to the north, anything to the south, would require a publicly noticed hearing in front of the Kern County Planning Commission. And so we would go through this same process. If they came back in 10 years, 5 years, and said, okay, we actually want to go another 10 acres or whatever it would be, they would turn in an application that says we're requesting to modify our existing conditional use permit, and then we would go through for that particular process. Again, regarding the uses, I just tried to touch base what uses are allowed. And again, I know your commission is familiar with the conditional use permit process. Again, the things that I recommend that you focus on is, do you believe the site meets the characteristics of Western Rosedale? Do you believe that there's adequate access to the site? You know, those are public health and safety types of comments that your commission has the decision-making authority to say, yes, this works, no, it doesn't work. I just caution you that too much of, well, I just don't want that use. That's just a different type of balance that we have to be, your commission needs to be careful at when making a decision, just because it is a use listed in the, as a use allowed in the A zone district, and that's what this property is zoned. It is zoned A. It is not zoned any other use. Did that answer your question, Mr. Judge?
Partially, I do understand that, Mr. Murphy, thanks for the clarification. I do understand we were only talking about this 12 acres. I am just discussing, as there was questions about future development, and wanting to clarify that in any project, if there's future development, is there a limitation on before CUP has to kick into a zone change requirement, or depending on ag use, it can be continued on a CUP as it progresses? Right. Is there a limitation to sizing, parking? Is there a trigger point that changes that?
For this particular use, no, there is not. I mean, the use is allowed in an A zone district, and so there is nothing, unless the zoning ordinance changes by the time they come back again. You know, if our zoning ordinance is still the same, there would never be a requirement to process a change in zone classification. If for some reason the Board of Supervisors decides anytime in the future that that use is not an authorized use in an A zone and it should only be allowed in industrial zones or anything along those lines, then they would actually formally amending the zoning ordinance, and then we would have a different question. But assuming the underlying use doesn't change in the zoning ordinance, they would never be required to go through a change of zone classification. It would only be a modification to their existing conditional use permit. And with any proposed expansion, you know, land use does change over time. They are not asking for the entire site right now. So theoretically, even if they got an approval and then they wanted to come and expand it later, but based on whatever has happened in and around the surrounding areas, maybe that future expansion, you would not be able to make the same compatibility finding. You know, I'm just throwing that out there as you would go through the same process that you're going through now based on the characteristics and the situation that would be at the time of the processing.
Mr. Yeah, that answers my question. I do appreciate you clarifying that. I was just looking at opportunities of trying to address concerns of the neighbors, and again, staying within the purview of what we are allowed to comment on and also make decisions based upon. And I know we do our best not to make decisions based upon emotion, and it is tough when you have something like this that comes to our commission that, you know, affects families and lives, and again, is, you know, where do we determine if a cemetery versus a solar project or something else is something that's very difficult for us to make a decision on. And I have to say, on my part, I do my best to try looking at that's allowed and try doing what we can to follow uses. And we have to treat each project as equal as possible. So tomorrow, we're not saying that we're taking bias over one based upon the type of use versus something else. And so with that, I was trying to look at opportunities to where we could help improve this project to minimize traffic flow and or issues that come to the community. So with that, I do appreciate staff and everyone's comments tonight. I know this is a difficult project, and I appreciate everyone spending time and effort into this, and I'll turn it back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Josh. This would make your turn present, Commissioner Ashley.
Thank you very much. I don't have any questions. I just did want to comment on kind of going back to what Commissioner McGiffney said. This is about compatibility. We do try to balance the emotion and you know what people like. You know, I always try to say that the view, the adjacent land use, you know, all that becomes a heck of a lot more expensive when you factor in how you can control the neighborhood, the stuff adjacent to you. You can't unless you write big checks to do that, much more than what you paid for your house. So I grew up near a cemetery. I spent 18 years of my life next to one. It was very peaceful. I actually took solace in the fact that I had relatives there and I knew where they were. It was comfortable to me. Maybe some people don't feel that way, but death is actually, you know, something that every one of us is going to go through. We're going to experience it. Those remains have to be respected. Some people want their remains cremated. They keep them in a box in their house. Others want to be in the ground. Happens to be my personal preference as well. So, again, I appreciate you coming out. I appreciate your opinion and your passion about this. But we are trying to balance what's allowed. We try to look at what could happen there. I'm sure a slaughterhouse wouldn't be very compatible with your neighborhood, but those are things that are allowed there. And again, you would be here fighting it, or at some point, you know, there's some project going to go in at that property. It's not going to always be vacant and in this idyllic spot right next to you. It's just not. So, again, I appreciate you coming. I appreciate your passion. That's all my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Ashley. I have a few questions for the applicant, and I will try to be quick. Do you currently own the land, or you're going through the process?
Do we own land here in Bakersfield?
No, the land that this proposed site is on.
No.
Okay. And you're going through the process, and it's subsequent to this decision, correct?
Yes, this hearing will decide whether we purchase and close escrow.
Great. You talked a little bit earlier about 6 other locations. Were any of the other locations feasible? Are you considering or keeping them on the docket?
Part of the process with the way we have to submit a proposal to the church, it's not a speedy situation. Talking to a realtor, no different than someone trying to purchase a home. There's multiple people trying to purchase it. Our particular situation is it takes time to get to Bishop's desk. And some of those properties, other vendors or other companies purchase them, which is 2 properties that are north of 7 standard that now homes are going up on. Some of the locations are just out of reach. It's 100 million, 150 million because they want to put houses in them. So yeah, different locations were available, entertained them, went through the process with Watson Realty, with all the different realtors. One gentleman right there on Zerker Road in 7 Standard, as soon as we said we're part of the Catholic Church, he doubled his price. So, like I said, it's been 10 years that we've been trying to find property, but it's not empty pockets that are allowed for me to use. It's finding the right price, the right acreage, what's existing there. Like I mentioned, there's 5 abandoned oil wells on this particular property that we had to research and make sure that they're not contaminating the soil and so forth. So, but yeah, it's been a trying process, and now with COVID, it's slowed everything down a bit more.
I imagine. Are any of the other potential locations, are they feasible for you though? Are they good options?
They start off that way, but once you start exploring of requirements and other issues that are with the property, then you kind of back away, no different than looking at a ranch property or so forth.
What are potential plans for the remainder of the parcel?
The remainder of the parcel will be exactly the same, but without an office. It's just continual ground burial. The columbariums, those are little niche features where the ashes can be placed into. That's the picture that Mr. Craig Murphy put up. And then up at the reason why we put the mausoleums, which are 25, 30-foot tall buildings at the very end up against the railroad tracks, was to create a buffer to help with the sound. I mean, some people are used to the train, no big deal, but it was just, it made sense to put it up against the backside, and of course trees and so forth that go in there. But future expansions, it could be 10, 12 years before you need one. It could be 40, 50 years before you need one. St. Peter's in Fresno originally was 24 acres. It lasted from 1970 to like 2010. So 40 years before we needed to expand an additional 8 acres. So for Bakersfield, a lot of the cemeteries here are landlocked. Union Cemetery cannot grow, they're landlocked. Panama South, if they sold the property to the west of them, they actually offered us to buy that property, but it was too expensive. They wanted the Catholic Cemetery on one side and Panama South on the other. Now there's shopping centers going up there. So I don't know if they have that same property anymore. Hillcrest is on the other edge of town. That's 30 minutes from here. They also, according to their current land, are running probably 30% left. So with the growth of Bakersfield, the need for a Catholic cemetery is going to be presented by the secular side, not us, but I heard Panama is also looking for property in the northwest area. The Veterans Cemetery out in Taft, I mean, that's a beautiful cemetery, but it takes a trek to get all the way up there. But yeah, the need for a cemetery is coming, whether it's from us or from another agency.
Okay, so aside from the 12 acres that we're talking about this evening, your plans are to utilize the remainder of that 45 to potentially expand.
Exactly.
Right?
But,
no other plans.
Yeah, but it could take years to eventually get to that corner at the bottom next to vector control.
Okay. And then my last question for you, thank you for being here this evening. Is there a requirement on the type of members that can be buried there? Is it for Catholic, religious only?
Yes, there is. Primarily as baptized Catholics. We serve roughly 25 to 30% of the community. That's the numbers that similar to Fresno's numbers. Who can be buried there aside from Catholics would be immediate family members, a spouse and children of someone that is Catholic. For example, if your parents are there but you are not Catholic, you can be buried there through association of your immediate family, and that's it.
Thank you. I have one more question. Mr. Murphy or Mr. Hall, you might answer this. Can we talk a little bit about the secular use of lands and what the limitations are around not religious exemption, but ensuring that we make a decision that doesn't discriminate against a religion?
Chairman Skidmore. So from a land use perspective, we're not looking at whether it was Catholic or whether it was any other type of religion. Private entities within the laws have the rights to what a private entity is allowed to do. So from our perspective, we looked at this as just a cemetery. There are no conditions that we are proposing that specifically limited who could be there, who could not be there, anything along those lines. We would leave that up to the facility itself. From the religious, as long as your decisions are based on the impacts and, if you do not believe that this site has available access to meet the demands of a cemetery, then you are within your ability to have it modified, changed, go through, deny, you make those findings, things along those lines. I would recommend that none of your decisions be made on the simple fact that it's Catholic. I actually think that it would be illegal to make a decision on that particular aspect of it specifically. So again, from a land use perspective, we didn't look at the fact that they were Catholic. I mean, we know that they were because they indicated that on their name, but I don't see any changes in land use, whether it was Catholic or any other type of religion. We looked at it in our review of it as a cemetery. And so from the land use side of it, who or who could not be buried there was not a relevant comment in terms of whether or not we thought the site was consistent with the appropriate standards and provisions that we require.
And then there was a comment made about the runway protection zone. Can you clarify that a little bit for me?
Sure, Madam Chair. So we've had this a couple times in terms of, there is a difference from a project that has FAA approval, that is an airport, that, is a public airport, versus a private airstrip, which still needs to go through its land use approval process. We have a private airstrip. We have a number of them throughout the county. The provisions that are afforded to the protection of that in terms of the airspace and everything else along those lines are a little bit different when you're talking about a private airstrip versus a public airport. A private airstrip has a lot less protections than a public airport in terms of, hey, what happens next to you, surrounding uses, everything along those lines. Clearly, the county doesn't want to necessarily say, yeah, we think this is a good use if we think it would impact or interfere with the airport. And so we kind of looked at that as part of our evaluation in terms of knowing that it was a private airport. I can give you an example just to kind of give you some. We had a project that proposed a facility that would have a lot of people next to an airstrip that carried a whole bunch of hazards. Based on the times of uses, even though the airstrip would be not allowed to take off, decisions were made that they didn't believe that that particular use next door was appropriate given the uses that occurred at that airport. So again, it's not afforded the same protections as a public airport, but clearly the fact that there is an airstrip can be accounted for in terms of your compatibility decision-making process. But from an overall building structure and everything along those lines, this particular use, it's not one where we anticipate having large gatherings for long periods of time, and where that it's a use that's inherently incompatible next to the particular airport, or I should say the private airstrip.
Thank you. Commissioner Sprague.
Mr. Murphy, do you have any other items not contained in the application before us to add to that? And can you clarify that by letting us know how that should read as it relates to this conditional use permit?
Commissioner Sprague, through the chair, I do not. I've already read into the record the one condition that staff was recommending be changed, just to help ensure that we knew exactly where the dedication was for Renfro Road. Again, I had a outstanding question in terms of, hey, did we want all of Vega Meadows to be a block wall? Did we want to allow a portion of it to be wrought iron? Based on the comments that have been provided, I would not recommend your commission change that, because a wrought iron clearly allows visible through it. Right. If you're wanting to help address some of those concerns regarding, hey, I come out of my house and, a block wall is a common type of development that is on a lot of major streets, and I believe that I would not recommend any changes to that condition if your commission didn't want to, or if your commission was desiring to help to provide additional visual restrictions on what people would see from outside of Vega Meadows. So the only condition I would have changed was the one I read in the record initially, unless your commission has any other ones you would like to discuss.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy.
Commissioner Judge?
Yes, I did have one more question I forgot to ask the applicant. And Madam Chair, if that's right with you, I'd like to request a clarification from the applicant.
Of course. Please come forward.
I think the quality of a project and the upkeep of a project, especially in a local residential community, is very important. And I think you can see the feelings that your surrounding neighborhoods have regarding this project. Some images were shown of another property which you guys manage, which was in Fresno. Can you clarify if that was your property, and if that was, what do you guys plan to do if this project is approved to maintain that situation on this property, and what would be the difference?
Yeah, the pictures that were put up are actually from our working cemetery at St. Peter's. The fencing, the entrance, and the type of dryscape or landscape that we're using out in front. It's a similar approach to this property to reduce the amount of lawn, to put in the similar curb, gutter, sidewalk, the bike trail or horse trail, landscaping, and then the wall. In the initial application, it did call for wrought iron because the concern from the security and police is that they can't see inside, and that's a perfect hiding spot. We haven't had that problem, but that lend to why the wrought iron was important. If it's a continual block wall, yes, it would mirror the opposite side of the neighbors.
No, I apologize. Let me clarify my question. I think you misunderstood my question. There was pictures shown of your facility in Fresno that had some decay, some stucco falling, some maintenance of that situation. So the question I have for you, if number one, is that a picture of one of your facilities? And if it is, what would you do differently or propose to the applicant so that your community can understand how you maintain your facility?
Yes, that picture was a different cemetery. It's called Holy Cross Catholic Cemetery. And and that building with the boarded up windows was built in the 1920s. It was knocked down about 4 years ago. It's no longer there. The maintenance of all three of the Fresno Catholic cemeteries under my jurisdiction, back in the 1800s, Calvary Cemetery, there was no care fund. So the diocese actually has been taking care of that cemetery for 140 plus years. Holy Cross, the same thing. So maintenance and the care fund is what is used to then go back and either redo a building, take care of the paint, the roads, the concrete, the fencing, the landscaping. So there is a separate care fund that is collected from each sale of a grave towards the perpetual care of that cemetery. So yes, we do have a way to deal with that and the improvements to continue to maintain the cemetery on an ongoing basis.
So that facility, you're saying, is no longer in that condition and has been...
No.
Okay.
It's a 2021 image.
Okay.
Hold on. We have public comment that has ended. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so I appreciate your comment. Thank you. And I have one more question, Mr. Murphy. You know, our Madam Chair mentioned something which sparked a reminder of one of our previous projects that we reviewed. And I understand the comment of how religious belief and religious should not come into use when it comes to land use. And I am just wondering if I remember a similar project that was a community center that came through, which had a religious back to it. And were they not restricted on not allowing themselves to be mitigated on only their youth had to be open to the community, so it would be allowed? And if I'm mistaken, please clarify. I just want to reiterate that, make sure we're not doing something differently than we did before in a previous project.
Commissioner, Judge, through the chair, that community center, there were no restrictions from a land use side that staff recommended or proposed or that your commission took related to who could or could not use that facility.
Okay, so there was nothing that was requested by staff saying this has to be open to the public or a single use. I wanted to clarify that.
Correct. There was nothing we incorporated in there. Now, the project applicant indicated that it was open to the public and anybody else that could go there, but the conditions did not specify one way or the other. They did not address that, to my knowledge.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy, for the clarification. Madam Chair, that ends my questions.
Thank you. I see no other commissioners in the queue. I will entertain a motion if we have no other questions or comments.
Well, I see no other commissioners willing to make a motion in regards to this item number 2, so I will make a motion that item number 2 be approved in accordance with what was read into the record by staff with the changes that Mr. Murphy brought forward, unless other commissioners have any additions or subtractions from what was read into the record.
Can Mr. Murphy clarify the decision either we discussed or that was made on the
block wall?
Block wall.
Yeah, that's read into the record.
Madam Chair, Madam Chair, we'll go straight. The only condition that is proposed to be changed right now is condition 5E2, and it was specifically related to clarifying where exactly the irrevocable offer of dedication is for the roadway along Renfro. I added language that ensured that it was a half width, so that was clear, and then I added the language about the adopted specific plan amendment. Right now, the condition that relates to the block wall requires that the entire frontage that is developed along Vega Meadows be a block wall. And so the only wrought iron that would be allowed is the portion that is at their entrance gate. Everything else would have to be
7 feet, correct?
It is a minimum of it is a 7-foot wall. That is correct.
Thanks.
Thank you.
That's my motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Sprague.
I'll second.
And a second by Commissioner Ashley. We will do a screen vote.
Three ayes, 2 nays, motion carries.
Thank you. What is the process for this, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. So this action was final by your commission, so it is subject to an appeal. For projects where the commission's action is final, again, those actions are subject to appeal to the Board of Supervisors by any interested person, and no development proposed by any application may be authorized until after the final date of appeal. That appeal may be filed with the Kern County Planning and Natural Resources Department. Our office is located at 2700 M Street, Suite 100 in Bakersfield, and that does include a filing fee of $540 on forms we have available at the department, and those forms are also located on our website. That filing must be made within 14 days of and including the date of this hearing. If no appeal is received, the action of your commission is considered final.
Thank you. We're on to item H, adjournment. The next Planning Commission meeting is scheduled for September 23rd, 2021. Can I get a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
And a second?
Aye.
All ayes?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everyone, for attending.
Our back and forth.